Alrighty, good afternoon, everyone. It's Oz Speedruns here with an event in conjunction with PAX Online. Got a little 12-hour speedrunning extravaganza for you. The theme has been Australia versus the world, so a lot of races, but at the moment we have two Australians pitted up against each other in an Ocarina of Time Ganondorf Source Requirement race. They'll explain a little bit more about the category when they go in, but for the moment, I'll just quickly remind you we are doing a general charity drive for cure cancer. Donate.ozspeedruns.com. No donation incentives or messages or anything like that, like usual, but obviously still a fantastic cause. Charity of choice for PAX Online, and one that we're very glad to help support today. So with that underway, we'd also like to remind you there's a new little event at the end of the schedule here. Our next event, Fast 2020, we're going to be revealing the schedule tonight.
Oh.
Okay. Yes, exciting times, exciting times. That's in about, about 6 hours from now, 5-6 hours from now, so do stay tuned for that, most certainly. But without further ado, I will kick it off to MikamiHero and TripppAU, who will be racing momentarily. Take it away and good luck.
Thanks, Softy.
Thanks, Soft. Appreciate you, bud. All right.
All right. Shall we get... let's do it.
Yeah, welcome everyone to OOT, Ocarina of Time, GSR, Ganondorf Source Requirement. We've got a big intro cutscene here so we can explain a bit of the basics of the category as we get into it. But shall we count down, Ray?
Yeah, let's go, buddy. Let's do it.
Alrighty, on what? 1, 3, 2, 1, let's get it.
Let's do it.
Cool. Alright, so as I said before, this is Ocarina of Time Ganondorf Source Requirement, or GSR for short. What does that mean? So the Ganondorf Source Requirement basically means we have to get the bare minimum required items to go and beat the boss Ganondorf, and then finally Ganon. So the couple of items that we need include things like the Shadow and Spirit Medallions. We need things like the bow and light arrows and quiver, bombs, stuff like that. Basically just the bare minimum stuff to go and beat the final boss. There are a couple of restrictions with this category. Number one is that we can't do any item manipulation, so any item we need, we have to go get from its original location. And number two, we can't do any wrong warps, so any location we have to go to, we can get to by any means as long as we don't warp there incorrectly. And that's the sort of basic outline of the route.
Yeah, this category's changed names like so many times since both Tripp and I have started running this, and
at least 4 times.
At least 4 times, so whenever we get people in our respective streams asking, oh, is this a new category? We're like, no, it's just this, but because of this, X, Y, Z, and they're like, oh, okay. So, but in its current iteration, as Tripp said, it's Ganondorf Source Requirement. It's definitely a category I think both Tripp and I would recommend to beginners who are trying to pick up the game, because it's not too long, but it's not too short either. And there's a lot of good safety strats that you can do as a beginner, and then just kind of work your way up to some of the more advanced strats.
Yeah, it's not a category where you need to be 100% optimal at every single strat to do well in. And it's a good race strat or a race category for that reason, where it can go either way, but it can also be very, very tight, very, very close, depending on who's racing who.
And the great thing is, because we've got the availability of strats, like as Tripp said, if things go completely south, at least we can still finish it. So the first thing you'll notice is that like the text is in Japanese, mainly because of text speed. Like I think Tripp mentioned this last time we raced, it's that Japanese is a more efficient language, and the fact that you could say more for less. So the fact that you can convey more with less characters means text goes by a lot quicker. I don't know the exact timing on this category, but for example, like 100%, just between the difference of playing Japanese and English, I think you save somewhere like 20 minutes or something ridiculous just from text alone.
It's a very substantial amount of time just switching language. Every character takes at least one, I think it's 1 frame per character to load.
Yeah.
And yeah, because there's less characters to say the same things in Japanese than in English, it's just faster overall. I think even just by in the intro cutscene it saves like 10 or 20 seconds, if not more.
It's pretty insane, hey.
Yeah, and it's something as easy as just switching the language.
Pretty much. And ironically, in the game's programming, the difference between English and Japanese is literally 1 byte. They just have to flick 1 byte from like a 0 to a 1, and then it changes the language from like Japanese to English. So the more you learn.
It's nice and easy. So off the bat, we're just going to grab the first item, which is the Kokiri Sword. It's pretty useful to do a lot of upcoming tricks that are going to be coming up. You'll also notice Mika and I walking backwards a lot, and also side hopping a lot. Walking backwards, if you're just going in a pure straight line, is usually the fastest method of movement. You can also roll. Rolling is more efficient than just running forward, but you have to kind of time your rolls in a specific way to get the most sort of distance out of it. Specifically as well as Child Link, side hopping is the fastest way of movement, but because side hops have to be frame perfect every single time to really get the speed boost and efficiency out of it, most people just opt to backwalk because it's just easier.
Yeah, and a combination of like backwalking, rolling, timing your rolls, as Tripp said. Timing side hops is quite important, timing the rolls as well. So you'll see us do like a mixture of movement, but we'll very rarely just be walking forwards. Unless it's like a very short... Yeah, exactly. They fixed that in other games, but not OOT.
One of the quick tricks there is doing that little clip up onto the bridge. For some reason, Nintendo only programs collision one way a lot of the time, so the underside of that bridge doesn't have any collision. So if you jump slash on the correct frame, you can actually just clip through it. And that's just a little trick that saves a little bit of time from having to walk all the way around all the bridges there.
Yeah. And so I just managed to clip through Pokey, and I think Tripp will be coming up to it now. Actually, his name's not technically Pokey, but we just call him that. Yeah. So Tripp's doing water extended super slide to get into the corner there. We'll be explaining some of the more what are called ESS related tricks later on the run. So what Tripp did there was get ISG, which is infinite sword glitch, and by doing it in a very specific spot, he's able to kind of push past the guy blocking the entrance, and we're just able to roll past him and exit the forest like ridiculously early. We would normally have to beat the Deku Tree in its entirety in like a quote-unquote normal playthrough, but this speeds things up a lot.
The little pokey dude has like a sort of circle pathway that he tends to follow, so you can use ISG or Infinite Sword Glitch to poke yourself through him, and then you can roll underneath him in his little circle sort of radius. And yeah, you can escape the forest in another method called Aqua Escape, but because we also need to grab the Ocarina here to do a few other tricks later on in the run, it's just efficient just to go through here because we need to get things along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know if you're gonna go for the owl skip Tripp, but
oh, you know I'm gonna go for the
I have no balls whatsoever. So I'll let Tripp explain the owl skip, but I'm being a big baby and actually talking to this owl. But Tripp will attempt to swag, and it's not just for swag, it actually does save time overall. So Pori Gabori.
Yeah, so normally you just run into this owl and he says some stuff and he's like, do you want to hear it again? And you're like, no. And then for some reason Nintendo programmed the yes button to be the top answer. But normally while you're talking to him, time of day in-game doesn't pass. So if we do a trick there where we recoil off the wall and do ESS or extended super slide, the game thinks that Link is busy in that state and so he can't be interacted with. And so in that case, we can skip talking to the owl. Now, it doesn't seem like it's a big deal because, I mean, you can just talk to him and walk past and you've got a lot of spare time to do whatever. But again, while you're talking to him, time of day doesn't pass. So if I'm sliding through there, time of day is still passing while I'm moving. So you might see that on Mikami's screen, he'll have music playing and it's a lot lighter and everything like that. I've basically arrived in town as it's about to go dark. And that will save time later on in the child section because we'll enter the Hyrule Castle courtyard. And because we have to wait for time of day to change back from night to day, it's just a little bit faster if you skip the hours because time of day is always passing.
Yeah, pretty much. So it may look like I'm ahead, but because, as Tripp said, because of time of day resolving, it's going to work out to be that Tripp's way of doing it is about, I think if you do both owl skips, it saves about 8 seconds from memory.
I think it's the first one is 8 and the other one is about 10 to 12, depending on how many pause buffers you do with it.
Yeah.
But the second one isn't as important to skip, I think. I think you can... The first one is the most important one to skip, but if you miss the second one, then you won't, like, lose a run. But if you miss the second one, you'll just lose the time. It's basically like you have to gamble on the owl skips to save the time. So hopefully I'll land the other one.
Yeah. The other one I go for, because, like you said, it's pretty risk-free.
Yeah, the second owl skip usually saves time no matter what, but the first owl skip in conjunction saves a little bit more.
So what I did there was just called Ocarina Dive. It kind of has the same idea as how we entered the well, where Tripp and I stood on the edge of the well, and then as soon as the Navi prompt came up, we mashed jump slash, and it pushes us ever so slightly back. And then we activate Navi, and then whilst we're interacting with Navi, we're kind of in a busy state, so the game doesn't detect that we're actually falling through water. And we did the exact same thing there, except off, we got ISG first, we got a hover off the flaming skull that comes around the corner, and then we hold a certain direction, then press Ocarina, and then it puts us in the Ocarina playing state, and then it doesn't detect that we just sink through that water. And we do that purely to get bomb chews. So now that we've got Ocarina, we've also got explosives. So the fact that we can get explosives this early makes speedrunning this game like insanely broken.
Yeah, with explosives early, it opens up a heap of sequence breaks and places you can get early and stuff like that. Another thing I should probably mention with ISG, aside from ISG activating the sword every frame, and it's good for taking out enemies and bosses, a byproduct of that is that while you have ISG, Link is unable to fall off ledges or go over, he can't go over any ledges or anything like that, so he can't fall off anything. So because of that byproduct, if you have ISG and use your shield to recoil off something in the air, the game is going to try and send Link downwards, but because he can't fall, the ISG then pins Link up in the air, and you can do a lot of cool strats with those mechanics where you can hover over stuff or hover and climb stuff, or if you want to not fall off a seam for whatever particular reason, you won't fall off, and it makes traversing rough terrain a little bit more safe.
Yeah.
It's a weird byproduct. I really don't understand why it happens. I guess it's just because they think Link is active and doesn't want to fall off a ledge, but it makes a lot of tricks open up and have like a huge potential. Like ISG is such a basic trick, and it opens up the gates for like a lot of different things.
Pretty much. So Tripp's also going to attempt the same owl skip that I just did now. It's effectively just interrupting. We're using like a 1 or 2 frame window of idleness, and we interrupt the owl being able to interact with us.
Yeah, with if you pull out a Deku Stick, the game also registers Link being busy while he's pulling out the Deku Stick. And while, again, Link is in that busy state, he can't be interacted with, so we just tell the owl to shut it, and then skip him.
Pretty much. So we both got it there, which is awesome. So less talking of, did you want me to repeat something that I will not repeat again? And we're like, what? Stop.
So this is convenient because now I'm right at the entrance as time of day changes. If you're really, really efficient at it, you can get it as the chicken, like, does its little Kokiri noise. And you can enter like as soon as time of day changes, because any time just waiting around is going to be wasted time.
Pretty
Now we're
much.
both at the Bane of Child section is guard segment. So these guys are very picky about when they want to catch you and when they want to actually do their job.
Pretty much.
If you're lucky, like I got there, you can do a little sort of manipulation with them where they won't catch you while Link is in the air. So if you're able to side hop on frame perfect side hop, so you just side hop as soon as Link touches the ground, he only will touch the ground for about 1 frame. And the rest of the time you're in the air. So while you're in the air, the guards won't be able to register you being there, and you won't be able to get caught. So if we side hop all the way through, it's 1, it's fast, efficient movement, and 2, it makes it so that we are less likely to get caught.
Pretty much.
Because every time you get caught, I think you lose about 30-ish seconds depending on which guard it is.
Sounds
so
about right, yeah.
you really, really want to dodge them, especially in a race situation.
So, Tripp had some really efficient side hopping there, so with a combination of him doing the first owl skip and being a lot more efficient with guards than I was, it pretty much made up for the quote-unquote looks like he was behind but actually wasn't.
Yeah, I had a bit of a rough escape because I didn't do West Escape, but now we've kind of evened out because I took the risk of the owl skips.
And we're both obviously showing Zelda the lovely Deku stick.
Bit of a sticky situation.
Just a little bit. Yeah, so those guards, both Tripp and I, I'm sure other runners in chat have had the same. We've lost so many good paced child sections just to guards.
Yeah, it happens.
It just happens.
There's a lot of inconsistencies about when they decide to catch you, and specific guards are a bit more, let's say, on point than other guards. I'm not sure if the practice run has been updated to show the guards' line of sight, but I think that was in the works. And even then, even with their line of sight being sort of mapped out, it still doesn't really even make sense how they catch you sometimes. It realistically shouldn't be possible. Like, they see you through hedges, and I'm like, nah, how does that work?
Yeah, or like he's looking like legit the other way, and he's like, "Bing!" And you're like, what? You are looking the opposite side. It's like, excuse me.
Yeah, it's like, mate. Sometimes they want to unionize and like catch you every run, and sometimes they're just on strike, and you'll get like 5 in a row where you'll just breeze through.
Pretty much. So the reason we're here is because we want to get Zelda's Lullaby, which is in turn used to get magic later. So we got to watch this cutscene because we have to get everything that we get in this category from its legit source. However, we won't be watching the actual cutscene where Impa teaches you the song. We'll actually be skipping it. And the way we do that is basically we trigger this cutscene on the exact same frame as we die. So it's basically like skipping music lessons, as Aggie puts it. So
yeah, we can
go.
Oh, sorry.
No, go.
Okay. What we can do is we can use the bomb trees that we got from the bottom of the well early, and we can recoil off the explosion, which both damages us and pushes us into the cutscene trigger. So we'll die at the same time as entering it. And because this game, it gives you the item you get from a cutscene, like as soon as you enter the cutscene, you don't actually have to play the song to have it right into your inventory. So as soon as the cutscene plays, it adds whatever item we need to our inventory, and then we don't care about the rest of it.
Pretty much.
And that goes for, I think that like you can skip the medallion cutscenes in the same way. You can either die while it's trying to warp you away on the same frame, or you can warp to another place. We're not allowed to do that in this category, but in a few other categories like MST or Hundo, you'll see them warping away and skipping the medallion cutscenes.
So we're going to be coming up to another big sequence break called Door of Time Skip. I guess we'll both get it first, get to the Master Sword, and then we can explain what the hell happened there. I had a bit of a shaky one.
Yeah. But as Ray said, yeah, it's pretty much one of the biggest sequence breaks that there is in OOT, because it allows you to skip having to do any of the child dungeons just at all, flat out at all. It's kind of funny. There's just a slight gap between the wall and the door. If you look closely on the graphics, yeah, there's just a tiny gap. If you do a specific movement setup where you do what's called a backwards side hop, and you can you can backwards side hop out of bounds and then jump / back in bounds past the door, which allows you to skip having to open it.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts because the fact that they didn't actually program the door to be completely shut. It's like
yeah, it's just a slight architectural fault.
But as Tripp said, it's like absolutely colossal in that we don't have to do any of the child dungeons if the category doesn't predicate that we have to. So it's pretty insane like that. So
it's such a massive skip, but it looks so quick and so nonchalant that it doesn't really seem like it's a massive deal. But yeah, realistically, you'd save like what, an hour just from not having to do any of the child dungeons.
Pretty much, yeah. Like if you just went through it quote unquote glitchless, you'd save at least almost an hour, probably more than an hour. So the fact that, you know, before other tricks were found, that they found this, it was like absolutely huge. So as par for the course with this category, there's a lot of cutscenes.
A lot of tech smashing because we have there are a few we can skip, but there are a lot of the other ones that are skippable are banned from being skippable in this category.
Yeah,
and there is another variation called No I Am Wrong Walk, which allows you to do some of the medallion cutscene skips, but it's not that big of a difference between this category and it's a category extension, so not as many people run it.
Yeah, and here's a fun fact. This category that we're doing now actually has more cutscene time per minute of gameplay than Glitchless does. And Glitchless is about a 4-hour category where you have to watch every cutscene. So I find that pretty interesting.
I don't think it's... What's the category that has the most cutscenes to gameplay? Is it any % now?
I think it's any % now. Yeah.
Because it's only like a 7-minute run, and the first 3 minutes are just cutscenes.
Yeah, it's like almost half.
Half of the run is just the intro cutscene.
Watch the intro. Good rupee. If you get good rupee RNG, you don't reset. If you get bad rupee RNG, you reset.
I hope you like watching that intro cutscene.
Yeah. Have you tried it yet?
Nah, I don't have a. I haven't learned or got around to learning it yet.
Yeah, no.
I have a disc. I have the MQ JP disc, but yeah, I haven't got around to learning it yet.
It just keeps changing. So like Tripp and I for those of you who are wondering what we're talking about, recently in the community, I'd say about in the last year, there's been a lot of development with this game to the fact that we're actually able now to do something called arbitrary code execution or arbitrary code injection, or ACE, which basically we're just writing code or injecting code into the game as we play. So the any % category, which before the beginning of this year was at around 17, 20-ish minutes, you know, depending on the skill of the runner, the category is now like 7 minutes. Yeah. So we both jumped on it a little bit with some of the categories that involved like more tamer variations of the trick, which is based around something called SRM, stale reference manip. But then it just kind of took off way too fast that both Tripp and I were just kind of like, I don't want to have to relearn like another route.
Yeah, I took a break from running for about 1.5 months to let my wrist heal because it was getting a bit crooked from running so much. And in that space of time, like the route went from about 3 different routes, got about 10 minutes worth of time saves from all this new stuff. There's a lot of massive developments.
Yeah, it was insane.
So at the end of this cutscene here, the door of time is still actually physically there, and it's still closed. So we can't just walk out and leave as adult. Luckily, if you save and quit as adult from, I think pretty much anywhere, as long as you're not in a temple,
yep,
it will spawn you on the other side of the door. So we can just quickly save and quit. and now we're back to accessing the rest of the world. And the next stop is going to be going to Dante's grave to grab the hookshot. The hookshot's pretty dang useful. It lets us do a bunch of different movement tricks and skips and whatnot. That's the nice thing about GSR is that it can't, because a lot of the other glitches are banned. It allows people to come up with more creative sort of ways of moving around and like clipping out of bounds and doing a lot of manipulating movement and stuff like that. We can get into a bit more of it as it happens, but with a good example of what the hookshot can do.
Yeah, so as Tripp said, that hookshot it's pretty handy. Otherwise, we'd be in a bit of a bind. We'd be in a bit of a bind with some sections. So after we get the hookshot, our first stop will actually be Shadow Temple, and not Forest Temple. That's kind of meant to be done in a casual setting. And how we actually enter Shadow Temple will demonstrate as we get to it, but that alone is also a pretty big sequence break as well.
Yeah, normally to access the Shadow Temple, the game checks to see if you've beaten Fire, Forest, and Water Temple by checking if you have the medallions, because normally the only way to access the Shadow Temple is by playing Nocturne of Shadow. wall and then have the hook shot ready, kind of like stores the momentum of it. So then if you hook shot the surface on the correct frame, it can launch you upwards. And that upwards force can help us land on this little seam. And we can walk along the seam with ISG, because ISG allows it so we don't fall off. And we can just walk around and access the part of the front door of the Shadow Temple. And normally you would need Din's fire or fire arrows or any kind of fire source to light all the torches to open a big door there. But we can actually jump over the loading trigger for the door, and so once it's not there, we can just waltz on in and enter the Shadow Temple. And we're gonna go towards the back of the Shadow Temple to the Dead Hand fight to go and pick up some hover boots.
Yep, so it looks like we both got through that section, no issue. And like 3 different people have explained hookshot jump to me, and all 3 explanations were like equally complicated, and I was like, I did not understand this whatsoever, hey.
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird trick. I think Rosewater discovered it, or made the setup for it. And yeah, it just works. OOT, it works.
It just works at this point, honestly. Oh no. Okay, so Dead Hand can be a little bit of a troll because his spawn can be like extremely random. But once we get past him, it's hopefully not too bad. Tripp, I also advise safety saving after hover boots. I'm gonna do the same thing as well.
If you get lucky, you can actually one cycle Dead Hand so he doesn't bury under the ground again. I kind of janked up the fight a little bit. But once you kill him, then the chest to spawn the hover boots appears, and then we've got to set up. It's a little bit difficult, so we might just get through it and then explain the aftermath.
Yeah.
Explosives early, we can, and now newly acquired hover boots, we can actually get into the clip out of bounds from the hover boots room with the specific setup and land in the room just before the boss room. So this is the room that has the door to the boss room, and everything is still actually loaded. It's just that the textures are not there, so all the collision is fine. So it allows us to do another trick with the explosives that we have to basically use a explosive to go underneath the boss door and push us into the loading zone to the boss room. So that saves having to go all through the temple and have this boat ride and everything like that. It skips having to get the boss key. Yeah, it's a massive sequence break in the Shadow Temple.
And it used to actually...
It's alright. I just wanted to say, like, Shadow's probably my favorite segment of GSR, just because that trick is so much fun.
Sorry, I thought Bongo got you. I was like, oh no, scared me.
Not yet. Another good thing with ISG is that it makes boss fights super easy, because again, ISG makes it so that the sword is active every single frame. So you can easily just get bosses stuck in a damaged stun lock, and it will just beat them out really fast. So we can clear through Bungo really, really easily. Normally I think the game wants you to have the lens of truth so you can see his eye and shoot him properly. But because he charges at you and he runs into you while you have your ISG active, the hitbox of the sword still triggers his eye to get stunned. So then we can just lay waste into him and beat him very, very fast.
Pretty much, because he charges right at us with his eye, but I guess one of the more technical points is that ISG is stored in Link's left shoulder. So if we kind of just look a little bit upright, as he rams us, he rams right into our shoulder and then just gets hit, and then we just kind of stand there between his eye and his hand, and then he just keeps getting hit until he's dead.
Has a lot of health. I think one of the highest health counts out of all of the bosses. So being able to kill him really fast and really efficiently is a nice little luxury.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it might take a solid amount of time to kill him casually.
Yeah. So here we are getting the Shadow Medallion, and the reason for this is because the category is called Ganondorf Source Requirement, we need to do everything to finish the Ganondorf fight and get everything from its intended source. So in order to defeat Ganondorf, we actually have to fire literally one light arrow at him. And in order to trigger the light arrows cutscene, we need to get Shadow and Spirit Medallion, because the game most people think that you complete all the dungeons and then you trigger the light arrows cutscene, but the game does a lazy check. It only checks to see if you have the Spirit and Shadow, because technically they're the last two you do in a casual playthrough, and the game assumes if you have both of those, then you have all the rest. But we don't even have to do the rest, we just have to get these two and then trigger the cutscene and Bob's your auntie.
The game normally assumes that the only way to get into Shadow Temple is to get the Nocturnal Shadow, and the other way to get the Nocturnal Shadow is to beat the first 3 dungeons. It kind of, yeah, it just assumes because you have the Shadow Medallion, oh, you've already done everything else.
Yeah.
So once you get the Shadow and Spirit, it gives you the light arrows, and then once you have the Shadow, Spirit, and light arrows in your inventory, that's what all the game checks as well to spawn the Rainbow Bridge into Ganon's castle, and that it leads to the final boss fight and the final segment of the game. So yeah, the first 3 medallions are pretty much obsolete because you don't really need them for anything.
Pretty much. So our next pit stop will be Dodongo's Cavern, because we're kind of running low-ish on bomb chews, and we haven't completed the conditions in order to buy bomb chews from, like, say, a shop, and you can't really get them from, like, drops in a bush. So we need some explosives in order to do some other crazy tricks that enable us to complete the run. So we make a pit stop to Dodongo's Cavern to get the bomb bag, which allows us then to get refillable bombs. So there's nothing too crazy technical about Dodongo's Cavern. One big thing is that because we're going as Adult Link, we're actually able to skip a large portion of it because Child Link is generally too short to climb this one ledge that I think Tripp's about to do. And Adult Link can kind of just waltz his way up because he's got that extra height.
Yeah, normally you're supposed to go around the back way as Child Link because, yeah, he's too much of a shorty. But with Adult Link's height, yeah, you're able to skip half the dungeon. And yeah, there's nothing really sort of glitchy or technical in DC, it's just moving efficiently. It is helpful that we have chews here, because we've made it so that this is meant to be the first place you get explosives, but because we've got them early, it allows us to skip through the temple a little bit faster. In this case, with this little staircase thing, you're meant to either have Goron's bracelet or, yeah, just Goron's bracelet, because I don't think you're meant to have explosives by this point yet. But because we don't have that, we can just use the chews.
Yeah.
Chews are a very valuable resource in this category.
Absolutely. And yeah, because we don't have a strength upgrade, having those bomb chews is even more of a paramount priority.
It's also extremely important. It's not necessary to finish the run, but you want to have at least one bomb chew for a trick later on in the desert section called Spirit Hover. And we'll explain more about what that is, because that's kind of like the penultimate trick as it happens.
Pretty much.
But yeah, you need at least one bomb chew to make that trick work. So if you're optimal, you'll arrive at this point with 4 bomb chews, which is like, it's a good amount. It's you can get by with, 2 or 3. 4 is very nice, just makes things faster. 1 makes things very, 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 very tight.
No, don't remind me. That raise.
Unless you're Ray, and then yeah, you can do it with 1 chew and beat everyone. But
that was my heart was like, I couldn't take it. I was like, crap, I've got 1. I didn't even buffer the bloody unlock. And the commentators were like, whoa, why is he flexing? I'm like, I just forgot to pause.
I wouldn't have thought to do it either. I was like, oh yeah, you can buffer that trick? I would have never even thought. So once we go through DC and get the bomb bag, we're just going to head up to the fairy fountain and grab magic, because we need the magic to fire the light arrow in the Ganondorf fight.
A single light arrow.
One light arrow.
I like to point out.
You hope it's one.
I have missed. Touch wood, we don't miss. I have missed. It was heartbreaking.
Yeah, that would be a rough. That feels bad, man. There's nothing really too special about anything coming up here. You just need to avoid a couple of enemies, and there is that little ledge going up to the hill that for some particular reason is very finicky with what animation Link will leave off it, if that makes sense. So we want Link to jump up to then grab another ledge, but for some reason in some cases he'll just fall off and just not jump, and if that happens multiple times it can actually lose you a good chunk of time just based on movement goofs. And there's nothing you can really do. You just have to keep trying.
Pretty much, yeah. I think it has to do with like his speed as he's going off the ledge as well. But sometimes even if it looks like you have good speed, he just rolls off. So it's like, I don't know why that trick's a thing. It's really annoying.
Finicky. Alright, once we talk to good old fairy here, she'll give us some magic. And then once we've acquired some magic, we're going to be heading into the area where the Forest Temple is. We're not going to enter Forest Temple just yet. We're going to get the Warp Song to come back to Forest Temple later. And we'll be performing a similar trick that we did earlier in the run with the Zelda's Lullaby cutscene skip, where we'll be able to skip another song cutscene. In this case, it's the Minuet of Forest.
Again, skip music lessons.
Yes, goodbye music lessons. So while we're traveling on the way there, we're going to be specifically damaging down, because from the fairy fountain you leave with full health because she heals you for full health. So while we're heading towards the Minuet cutscene skip, we need to just take a little bit of damage to make sure that we have the right health to do the cutscene skip in the first place. So little bits of damage here and there until we get into the Lost Woods. We should both have half a heart.
Yeah.
Because then once we take another hit of explosive damage, that's another half heart, and that will be the death blow that we need to go into the cutscene skip. So we just skip Milo there. You're normally meant to play Saria's song to prove that you know her to him, and then he's like, oh yeah, you know, the green clothes wasn't a giveaway, but you know. The fact that you know a groovy tune is, you know, that's definitely the security factor here. But you can do a little ESS turn and then just backflip over his sort of circle radius. That skips having to know the song and talk to him, because otherwise he chats on for a while.
He does chat on for a fair bit, I remember, yeah.
And then if we line up on this guy's booty here at the specific sort of point, it's kind of convenient because we can pause buffer a bomb pool and walk backwards from his booty. And as it explodes, it will also make us enter the cutscene. So when we enter the cutscene, we also die, which allows us to skip having to watch us learning it. Because again, once you enter the cutscene, you automatically get the item or the song. So as well as dying to skip the cutscene, it also gives us the prompt to go back to the title screen, or basically just save and quit. And that allows us to go back to the Temple of Time, because we're going to head from the Temple of Time to the Gerudo Valley.
Yeah.
Because we're going to head to Spirit Temple. And this is where a lot more of the movement tricks start coming in. So Mika and I are going to be doing what's called a HES, or a Hyper-Extended Super Slide. And it's basically the most efficient way of moving in the game. Right, there we go. So you can take the recoil off a bomb, and because while you're rolling you have invincibility frames, you don't take any damage, and it's that little bit of recoil speed because it flicks Link at such a high velocity backwards. And while you're holding ESS position, the reason why it works is because it doesn't have any speed value attached to it. And ESS is just the bare amount of sort of input you can put on your control stick. And so because it doesn't have any speed value attached to it, it just uses the speed value from the frame beforehand. So if we get that high velocity recoil from the bomb while holding ESS, it will keep that speed as long as we hold ESS. And that allows us to go a lot of places really, really fast, because you can just slide across big parts of the overworld.
Pretty much. It's, Hessing is a really, really valuable trick. And,
It's the fundamental movement trick of OOT, I would say.
And this section that Tripp and I are doing is probably by far the most scary section, because there's a lot of tricks we got to kind of link back to back and not screw up. And in a high, I guess we're considered, like, our times, like our PBs respectively, I guess we're kind of in that higher echelon, so any big mistake here in a normal PB pace run would have been run over.
Yeah, it gets to the point where the gameplay on this category is very optimized at higher levels. So you can skip that. Normally you either need a long shot or a Pona to get over the broken bridge, but we can do what's called a mega side hop, and then because we have hover boots, we can use the momentum from the mega side hop to transfer it onto the boots, and that allows us to slide over. And now we're going to do gate skip. So normally you're meant to, free all the carpenters to get the Gerudo card to open the gate. But what we can do is that on a specific frame with a specific setup with these bombs is that you can recoil yourself through the gate, allowing us to skip having to free all the carpenters and get into the Haunted Wasteland early.
So I was attempting to do Hess through the first half of the Wasteland, but then I done goofed. So I'm a bit low on bomb count, and also my health isn't the best, so I'm just gonna have to go through this semi-casually. Well, I shouldn't say semi-casually, it is pretty much casual movement at this point.
I tried to get it, but yeah, I do have one spare bomb. I could have gone for it again, but I'm just gonna keep that spare bomb for any potential goofs that might happen. Because coming up is the penultimate trick I mentioned before, known as Spirit Hover, once we get to the Haunted Wasteland. So what Spirit Hover entails is that there is a chest that contains the silver gauntlets that's already spawned once you enter the Desert Colossus on one of the hands. And you can use ISG, and ISG is effective not letting Link fall off ledges, to basically do a hover up the outside of the temple, and which allows you to hook shot onto the silver gauntlets chest. And then because we have hover boots and a couple of spare bombs, it allows us to slide onto the other hand, which effectively skips us having to do about half of the dungeon. It also skips having to do any of the child segment of the dungeon, because this is the only dungeon that does both child and adult segments. So it saves us having to come back, learn the Requiem Spirit, go through the child segment, blah blah blah. But it is also extremely difficult, so if we go a bit quiet while we're flipping, understandably so, it's because it's hard. So we gotta get this little toucan or this Gwei here to come attack us, because if he hits you while you're in the middle of your hover, he will knock you down and ruin your day. I'm going to start my hover here, the hover boots. The reason why you want shoes is because while you have ISG and you're hovering, the camera is normally locked, and once the camera is locked, you can't move or change your facing position at all. And we kind of need to reverse Link's direction so we can hover in the right way. And I failed it, because I was chatting too long. Oh well. But, I failed it. So normally you will hover onto a seam up there and skip it, but I buggered it up. So now I gotta go through the temple normally, which takes a bit of time. Well, semi-novel. I have to go to the adult segment at least.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, man. I just got onto the scene, but yeah, as Tripp says, it's a very, very scary trick. And when we're both doing like PB pace runs, we both generally go pretty quiet there just to focus because it's pretty catastrophic.
I was chatting too much. So I could've probably just focused. But now we got 2 different rounds. So Mika will get the fortunate benefit of not having to go through the temple. Pretty much means I probably lose the race unless something catastrophic happens.
Naburu could clip me for all we know. So yeah.
But that's the way it goes. It's just that kind of category where one mistake and you're kind of done. You're done there. But it's also the category where one mistake and you're done on PB, but you can still go.
Yeah, exactly. So doing Spirit Hover there, what we both did, and Tripp almost got it, was it saves I think 2.5 to 3 minutes from memory. So it is pretty handy to get, but as Tripp said, and we said earlier, if one's a beginner and they're trying to play through this category for the first time, we would just recommend going through Spirit Temple normally because it's just way less scarier.
There's less things that can go wrong overall, and there's a bit more safety things that you can do if you go through the temple.
Absolutely.
But if you can land Spirit Hover, it's very, very fast. It just happens to be like the hardest trick, and it's in the middle of the run, so it's very difficult to like get a good one going and then keep it cool throughout the whole thing.
Ironically, I should point out that Tripp and I both know a runner called Chef Bear, who's currently the world record holder in the glitchless category. He has a PB that's faster than both of ours, and he doesn't do Spirit Hover.
It's nuts to me.
Yeah.
What? It's absolutely nuts.
Yeah, like the fact that he doesn't need a trick that saves over 2.5 minutes and still beats our PBs when we use it is just a testament to like how good his movement is.
Yeah, do you know what his PB is off the top of your head?
1:16.23.
Yeah, that's nuts. So he could have 1:14 potential, and I think the world record's like 1:12.
Yeah.
Something like that. So, like 1:12 and 1:14 sounds like it's a pretty big difference, but it really isn't when you consider how much time you actually spend doing stuff in this category, because a lot of the time you're just waiting for cutscenes to end. So the time you have to catch up with any sort of mistakes is a little bit more limited, because you have to just account for the fact that a lot of the time it's just faffing around.
Yeah, so what I just did there was do a Spirit Temple boss key skip. So there's a few variations on how we can do this. I just did something called head skip, where we kind of clip out of bounds temporarily to like skedaddle past the door, and then we hit the loading zone kind of like from the side. It was actually a very recent addition. I believe the runners saw it done in a TAS, and then people started theorizing like, wait a minute, this might actually be possible to do in like quote unquote what we call RTA, which is like in an actual run by a human. So yeah, so now I gotta take on Naburu, and this is actually quite a scary fight because if she clips me and I die, I'm all the way back at the start of the dungeon.
Yeah, you don't get any leeway with her. I'm still currently making my way to the dungeon. I'm a little nervous because I'm like very close to dying.
Careful. So what I could normally have done there, and Tripp and I both do this in like PB pace runs, I could have done something called the Naburu cutscene skip, where we void out as we do the last hit on Naburu, and it's going to skip the cutscene that I'm watching now. It's a 15 to 18 second time save, but like I said, if you screw it up, it's like 6 minutes lost because you have to go all the way back to the start of the dungeon. So in like race scenarios, I pretty much never go for it unless it's like I absolutely need to. So Tripp's doing a trick now that's actually pretty dope.
So because I'm on such low health, I don't want to get accidentally owned by this knuckle here. So what I can do is if I jump slash on this chair here and at the right time, I can actually clip over the gate like that. So now if I get clipped by this Knuckle, it will just spawn me on like just the room here rather than all the way at the start of the temple. It's not necessary. If anything, it like just sort of slows me down. But because I'm on such low health, I'm just gonna take the L.
And you never know what could happen. Knuckles are just nasty.
Yeah, they do a lot of damage. So.
And
But now, because I'm behind the Knuckle, I can do a lot of damage really, really quickly to her without her really getting enough time to hit me. And she spawns a bunch of hearts from all the stuff that she breaks, so...
Yeah, Quills in chat was like, that's absolutely nuts that Chef Bear got a 160 without Spirit Hover. Like, it's if anything, it should just be a testament to like how important movement is in this game. Like, obviously it's unfair for us to compare because Chef is the glitchless world record holder, and glitchless is pretty much all movement. So, I guess it makes sense.
But it's nuts.
It's just, yeah, it's still insane. Every time I think about it, I'm like, that man's a machine. Oh, okay, so I'm fighting Twin Rover. And she can be a bit of a troll because her movement can be very, very erratic. I can control it in some ways. Like if I see the other witch in sight, I can kind of use my hook shot and keep the other one in place and then pray I don't miss. But sometimes it's just unlucky, like they can just fly behind you and you're just like, oh, why?
That's really bad.
What happened?
I'm just failing ISG over and over again and losing all my bombs.
Oh, because you use the you use ZL to get the key.
Yeah, so normally you can get ISG off the Triforce symbol there, but because I used it up having to play the song to get a chest, I don't have that option anymore, so now I have to use the bomb. Missing.
Something else I'd like to point out is that ISG is frame perfect, so we may make it look easy, but it can be possible to screw up because we just mistime it.
So we can do a little boss key skip here. It works this similar sort of way as the gate skip. So what happens is that once you get that first little initial hover and then take damage, the game is sending Link downwards really, really fast. And if you're able to take, I think it's usually from above, but if you can take damage while flipping really fast, or in that downwards momentum, it will push you in that little bit backwards, or whatever other direction you're intending to go. So we can take that high momentum from going down and transfer it to going through stuff.
So I got trolled there by second phase Rover. I stood a little bit too far in, so my last shot didn't connect with her. But thankfully with second phase Twin Rover, the first 3 shots are always the same element, because you need the 3 of the same before you reflect, and then the second 3 are also the same. So if you do happen to miss, the next 3, the first 6 are basically the same set. But after that, I have no idea. I think it's random. Excuse me.
It's the Naburu cutscene skip. So what the setup there is that you can hookshot her while you're on the between this sort of corner spot and her, and it will push Link through the wall, and then send them voiding out. So what happens is that while Link is voiding out, the cutscene starts, and then once it triggers that, oh, he's voided out, it then skips the rest of the cutscene. So it saves, yeah, about like 15, 20-ish seconds, depending on how fast you do it. It is extremely risky, though, because any damage, you'll just, no matter how many hearts you have in this category, you will die if she clips you. So you get very, very, very close to copying a pretty big hit.
Yeah, both Tripp and I have had really bad instances where she's just clipped us and you're like, well, alright, that's that. It's pretty gnarly.
So hopefully I get a little bit of better robot RNG.
Yeah, hope I hope he gets a better RNG than I did. I got I got destroyed, but Rover is just Rover.
Yeah. Like, casually, Rover's really cool. Like, it's a really cool boss with how it's designed and everything, but because of her randomness factor, she's just the worst speedrunner.
She really is. Oh my gosh.
Okay, so Le Double.
Oh, you got double? Nice.
I got Le Double. So, Rover, this is what we mean by the Rover RNG. So in certain situations that one of the witches will just sit there without flying around, and then she'll charge up another shot pretty much straight away. So like in this situation, they're kind of faffing around, flying around. You want as many of those sort of quick shots to happen as possible. They can start off with doing a quick shot, and then you can get sort of streaks of getting double quick shots, and even in some cases triple. There has, as far as I'm aware, never been a recorded quadra shot. There has never been someone who's gotten 4 quick shots in a row on video, as far as I'm aware. So the holy grail in this fight is to be the person who gets the quadra.
Yeah, it's Tripp, basically. So my best Rover fight ever was, I started the fight, I went to a corner, she immediately fired, and then went into a triple. And I've never beaten that gold since. It's huge.
That's probably one of the best golds in like, the world.
I'm just like, what? Everyone was like, holy shit. Like, I think I golded by like 25, 30 seconds or something ridiculous.
Every time you get a quick shot, I think it saves about 12 seconds, 10 to 12, because just all the flying around and faffing around gets cut out. So if you get a quick shot to start and then triple, that's what, 12, 24, 30, 36-ish seconds plus.
It's
like, that's nuts.
It's actually insane for this category, yeah.
Insane. Like, that's a massive time. I think I'm only on a quarter heart at the moment, so I'm gonna probably just pick up his heart.
Yeah, just to play it safe. So the next stop for both of us is going to be Forest Temple, and the reason we're going to be coming here is so we can get the bow, so we can fire that one pesky light arrow. So we're not actually going to finish Forest Temple, just get up to the bow. And Forest Temple doesn't have many tricks. It's kind of like Dodongo's Cavern, as Tripp pointed out earlier. It's just mainly movement that we have to do. We'll do a few things, like, you know, we do one ledge clip, the same principle as how we skipped the Shadow Temple boss door when we did boat skip. And then we also do, I think it's called a mega jump. I just call it a damage boost.
Yeah, same idea as Dodongo's. It's just a little bit more advanced in terms of some movement strats to use. Because we have a lot of access to bombs and explosives now, we can and hover boots, because normally you're not meant to have hover boots during Forest Temple, so it allows for a lot more sequence breaking as well. Yeah,
and probably one of the most troll parts of Forest Temple is the Stalfos, because you generally have to fight 2 of them at a time, and their movement, like Twin Rover, can be a little bit erratic at times as well. So I am now coming up to the ledge clip that we do on the Song of Time block. You basically get into a certain position and then you roll, and then on the first frame Link grabs the ledge. As long as there's a wall behind him, I think Link kind of clips like into the ledge, and then we're able to just fall through the block, which is pretty dope.
Yeah, normally you need the Song of Time to have the block go from Adult Link timeline back to Child Link timeline, but because we never completed the Child dungeons to get the Ocarina of Time or the Song of Time, yeah, we have the ledge clips through it.
Which is awfully convenient, otherwise we'd be stuck. I think there's other ways to get around it, but it'd be a pretty big like detour. So
that's...
Yep.
Yeah, sorry, I was just saying, I'm just going through the Spirit Medallion cutscene, and I'm about to head into Forest, so it still is a close enough race, because, I don't know, Mika could get trolled in Collapse or get hit by a Stalfos. There's still a lot of things that can go wrong.
Anything can happen in this category. So what I did there to skip those 2 blocks was called a ground jump. It's kind of like what we did. It's exactly what we did actually when we were trying to get the menu at a forest, where it's almost like Link stalls a jump basically, and normally Link doesn't have any button to jump, so it enables us to get through those 2 blocks a lot easier, because we otherwise wouldn't be able to do it because we don't have any strength upgrades to move those blocks. So it's mighty convenient we can ground jump, otherwise we'd be screwed.
Yeah, even though that's a adult block, you need the Goron Bracelet, which is the child strength upgrade, to actually move them. So, because we are able to ground jump and just jump over, I fell off the log. You can just, yeah, pretty much jump over them. It saves having to go and get the any strength upgrade. But you need the Goron Bracelet specifically because you won't get Silver Gauntlets until Spirit Temple. This little log can especially be a bit trolly. There's a particular point in it where even if you're going full speed and you roll off the ledge and everything, it kind of just happened there. Link will just drop off. And one of the top speed runners is kind of gets a bit memed on, because I think during a world record run or world record potential run, did that exact thing where you fall off and you lose like 30 seconds.
Oh, is that what happened? Is that why they meme on count?
No, so they meme on Val for it, because I think, yeah, he lost like 30-40 seconds on like a really solid run because he just fell off the log.
Oh no, we've all done it. We've all done it. I've fallen off that log many times.
I did it
too.
twice in a row, not the other day. I was like, are you serious?
That log is so bloody troll. I hate that log so much.
Stupid log.
Oh jeez, yeah, so as Tripp said, that log is just annoying. So I am gonna be watching the Light Arrows cutscene now, and I believe Tripp is making his way through Forest Temple, taking on Lestalfos.
Yeah, Stalfos won.
Yeah, as Aki said in chat, first room Forest Log is the true boss.
Honestly, it is. Like, your entire run gets determined whether or not you fall off that log in Forest Temple. The rest of it you can probably get away with, you know, a couple of mistakes here and there. Like, fall off the log? Nah, you're boned.
Pretty much. Because you have to climb all the way up, or use hookshot and then partially climb, and then just kind of loop around, and it's just, oh, it's a pain.
It's a massive time loss for something that's so simple. It's just jumping, and yeah, it's like, thanks Miyamoto. I'm gonna blame you for that one.
Could you imagine if the key was just there, like on the floor? That'd be so much more convenient.
Yeah, I'm attempting what's I think it's called impossible jump, but yeah, you basically on a particular frame use the recoil from a bomb and the little boost from the hover boots to skip doing a large chunk of the Forest Temple. Which is good because Forest Temple can be a little bit confusing if you're not familiar with it. Come on. So that's the frame.
Impossible jump. Mega jump.
Put the hover boots there, and yeah, it sends us that little bit of extra momentum we get from the bomb, and having hover boots allows us to grab onto this other ledge, and that allows us to get into here. And I think normally you need like an extra key or something to get into this room from the other direction, and we want to kind of save the keys that we have to get further in.
Pretty much.
And doing ground jump here just so we can jump up onto these blocks. Ground jump I think is like the easiest glitch in the game to do. It doesn't require anything frame perfect or anything fancy. You literally just have to hold shield and like roll into a bomb from the right distance and it will work. Like anyone can do it, even if you've never played OOT before. So
seriously, yeah, as Tripp said.
But it's rather helpful because, yeah, you don't have that option to jump in freely in this particular version of Zelda. So being able to jump at any point in time allows for a couple of sequence breaks. Like it's especially useful in Sacred Forest Meadow because it allows you just to jump up and skip having to deal with any of the big spear dudes because they can hurt.
Oh, those moblins, yeah.
Yeah.
So as Tripp said earlier, like why the knuckle? I think I mentioned that knuckles do 4 hearts, so that's why in Spirit Temple it's always really scary taking on a 9 knuckle, because one hit from them and we're just gone.
Yeah, you are done, bro. There's no way to block their attacks either. Like the shield won't work or anything like that. They will bust through it. So the only thing to do is to either get right up in their grill and effectively crouch stab them, or sort of play cat and mouse. The Stalfos can be scary because depending on what... They have a couple of different attacks. I think their normal just slash attack feels 1 heart, or half a heart. I think it's 1. No, it's 1 heart. But they can also do a jump slash attack which deals 2 hearts, so they can chain up their attacks rather fast. And sort of ruin your day if you're not careful.
Yep. I've been ganged up by them as well. It's so bad.
Yeah, it doesn't happen too often, but it's bad if you die to any of the Stalfos, but especially the second fight, because it sends you to the very start of the temple. So that would require you going through, doing the impossible jump again, doing all the ground jumps, and then going back to fight them.
It's bad news bears, pretty much, because our explosive count, as Tripp mentioned earlier, is also very important in this. Like, the only time we got to restore explosives was in Spirit Temple, and after that, unless we go super out of our way, it's going to be a big time loss to refill on explosives. Yeah,
there's no way really convenient that drops any bombs. With the N6, because we're both playing on Virtual Console, there is a bit more leniency with the N64 route. I think you can get a bomb drop from the Dampe raid.
Yes.
And a few bits and bits, because they actually go to get bombs earlier in their route compared to VC. So they have a bit more leniency with how much they have, but generally, yeah, depending on what strats you do, like for my general route, I only have about 2 bombs spare between getting the bombs and entering Spirit Temple. And then I think you probably get about 4 or 5 from once you've beaten Spirit Temple to the end of the run. But you don't want to get too cocky and be like, oh yeah, I've got 5 spare, because then there are some situations in which you just won't hit ISG 5 times, and now you've got no spare bombs.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, I have 5 more bombs than what I would normally consider a safe run for me. I just picked one. I just got the extra pot just for safety, as Tripp said, because the last thing you want to do, especially on a PB pace run, is run out of bombs because you screw up a trick like once or twice. Even if it's just once or twice, you might like rip yourself out of explosives.
See, I think you've got what, 15, 16 bombs? I think I only have 6 or 7.
I think that's like
a bit tight.
I would suggest.
I should have enough.
I would suggest a safety save in Ganon's.
Oh yeah, I might do that. Because I need... I think I've got 6, so then I need 3 to enter, then 1 to put... Yeah, I've got no spare bombs.
I'll check
Unless they skip doing a 2-bomb setup, which is slower, but I'm not going to do it unless I run out of those bombs.
So normally to dispel this barrier that is surrounding the entrance to get to Ganon's castle, we need to complete these little mini rooms around that we call trials, but what we're going to do is just hover past them, if I can hover.
Yeah, for some particular reason, the wall that is opposite the water trial is just, the whole thing is a loading zone into Ganon's castle for whatever particular reason. So if you do a slight little hover similar to the one that we would have done at Spirit Temple,
yeah,
it allows us to just basically hover into the loading trigger, which then allows us to skip the barrier.
In another category called MST, we can't do that because we actually have to complete the trials, which are those rooms there. And the trials are surprisingly very scary because they're right at the end of the run for that category, and one little thing and your run can probably much be dead. So Dino foes, and then we got to take on 2 more Stalfos, so Seems we can never escape these guys. Oh my goodness, Dalvos! Stop circling me!
Death in Castle, I think, loses about a minute from any of these enemies, so can be a bit, especially if it's, you know, a good pace and it's towards the end of the run. You don't want to get whacked by them by accident.
Pretty much. So that's
Especially
that.
with Knuckles.
Oh jeez, yeah. So I gotta take on these Knuckles now, and there's two of them. So in a casual setting, these two Knuckles are actually like frightening, and even in a speedrun setting, they're frightening. But we have ways where we can actually kill them simultaneously, and we call that double Knuckles.
Yeah, well, actually, I never went over it, but you'll notice that a lot of the time, you'll see Mika and I crouch stabbing, and the reason why crouch stabbing is usually the best method of attack is that, similar to how ESS doesn't have a speed value, crouch stabbing doesn't have its own damage value, so it just uses the damage value of whatever attack you did beforehand. So if you do a jump slash, that does the maximum amount of damage, but obviously it has the big long jump slash animation. If you jump slash before a fight and then crouch stab, the crouch stabs have the same damage as a jump slash, so you're able to output a lot of damage really, really fast. It's even better as well, because if you jump slash before doing ISG, the ISG glitch is started from a crouch stab, so then you're able to do jump slash damage every single frame while the sword is active, which allows us to kill bosses like Bongo and Dorf really, really fast, because we can just output so much damage.
Pretty much. Otherwise, fights just take forever. So Tripp's gonna be making his way through Castle now.
I'm just about to go over the Rainbow Bridge.
Yep. So I'm gonna take on Dorf, and I have lost runs to Dorf before. He basically, the strategy is we're gonna be reflecting one shot off him, and then we fire that one light arrow that we spent all this time preparing for. We get ISG, as Tripp mentioned, off a crouch stab, but we store a jump slash, and then we use the bow to like lock him down and just output like a crap ton of damage. However, sometimes he can play tennis with us and reflect the shot that we hit back at him, and it's very annoying. Other times he just takes it, other times he becomes like Roger Federer overnight, and we're just like, okay, fine.
Yeah, I've had a run of the old No Wrong Walk route, and yeah, similar situation where you have to have him reflect the lightning ball, and sometimes most of the time he doesn't reflect it at all, and sometimes yeah, they reflect it once. I've had it reflect 30 plus times before he decided, oh, I've only got 5 bombs, so yeah, so normally I would get ISG up a bomb, but there's actually a couple of goons in here that are targetable, and I can get ISG off.
I didn't even think about that.
Allows me to flip into the castle. Yeah, otherwise I'd have to one bomb super slide into Captain Fire, which I could do, but I'm not going to risk it.
That's nice. Got past the castle. So Dorf thankfully didn't play tennis with me, but I could get trolled by this, as Tripp said, this collapse section. We do something called a void warp, where we kind of void out, but load the coordinates of another area at the same time. I think that's how it works.
Yeah, pretty much.
But we can sometimes, there's falling rocks in this section, and where they fall is random. So as I'm about to clip through, I could get hit by a rock, and we call that the Yep Rock.
Every runner's bane, because yeah, it's all the rocks are based on just Link's positioning camera, which is all, you know, and then randomly spawned from that. So it gets to the point where any rock will throw off any positioning for the trick setups that we need. Also, you have to keep track of how much health you have, because if you void out, you also take damage, and then you have to have enough damage to fall, and yeah, it becomes a big old mess. So I'm I'm just whacking salt and pepper here.
Salt and pepper.
Yeah, because they're black and white.
No, I didn't even think about that until you mentioned it. I was like, oh yeah.
So that's double knuckles again. We can jump slash beforehand, so each crouch stab does jump slash damage, and then because their hitboxes are pretty big, we can actually just waste them pretty fast. But yeah, if they hit you once, you're dead. You just get chopped.
Yeah. So I didn't get.
You can.
Yeah.
You can take them on individually. That is also another option where you can fight them in the same way that we fought them in the what do you call it? The Nibiru fight, where you kind of just get in front of her right foot and just shiver a bunch of times. But it's obviously slower to do it that way.
Yeah. So Tripp's coming up to the door fight now, and bless RNG, no tennis.
Yeah. Good old door. So yeah, again, it's a testament how optimized the category is, where one trick difference and that sort of determines the race. But even still, it was a pretty close one.
I'd say so, absolutely. All things considered.
If I wasn't so chatty during Spirit Hover, I probably should have just focused, but oh well, at least we get two different showcases of how the route goes.
Next race we do, I'm going to remind you, I'm like, Tripp, Spirit Hover, let's just do this first and then we can go.
And that puts you two wins versus my, and a tie.
And a tie. It's alright, there'll be plenty of other chances. Especially if we race like defeat Ganon, I'm screwed. Because I don't know how to do Gim anymore.
Yeah, I was thinking of that. I was saying that the other day to Habble. I'm like, hey, do you remember how to do Gim? Because I probably don't.
I don't.
I might be able to buffer it, but yeah, it'd be a lot of de-rusted on that one.
I'd have to watch that tutorial you sent me.
Got that rusty ass tutorial.
Hey, it worked. That's the important thing.
So yeah, that's there you go. I got a I got a good reflex. So yeah, he reflects the ball back and then you get hit and things go a bit funky. So you obviously, if you have only 3 hearts or 4 hearts and not that much health, he'll just kill you, which makes it like that.
Oh no.
So if you die, you don't have to do all the fights again, but you have to climb the tower again, which is probably so I'm gonna take a G-Man decides to mean things.
He is legit G-Man, like everything can go wrong there. Ah, bloody dwarf. This category, Ganondorf source requirement, classic.
But this is why it's never really over until the final blow is done. Because even still, Ray could die here.
Oh yeah.
You'd have to go all the way back down, and then we'd be back to even pretty much.
Pretty much. I've botched this fight many times. And Ganon is also very scary because he hits you for 4 hearts, like all the Knuckles. So I take 1 hit and I'm like gone skis. So it's both Dorf and Ganon are just like, they're relatively simple in terms of what we have to do, but holy crap, can you get like botched?
You will not cooperate properly.
Pretty much, Kaya. Not over till the fat pig sings.
Hey.
Nice.
So that's what's normally meant to happen. And
oh, that is so...
Normally what you can do is just jump slash to damage G-Man here. and then ISG, and it will just hit him every frame. It's actually slightly slower to do that. Oh my god, bruz. If you crouch stab him within 2 frames, I think, of each animation, you can actually hit him 10 times, which is how many times you need to hit him to kill him, without using ISG. It saves like 2 seconds just because the prompt for ISG doesn't get the text trigger.
And that's what they have to do in glitchless, actually, because you can't do ISG in glitchless, so they're pretty much forced.
Yeah, you have to. You know, it ends up being faster as well. So yeah, GG Miko, what was that, 120-ish?
120.29, but I think I forgot to say time because I didn't want to distract you.
Okay, fair enough.
So they stopped it at 121.02, which is all G.
Not a bad pace.
Yeah, for race, like you said, this category is just all over the shop. Anything can happen.
If you can get around a 120 in a race, you've done pretty well. Like around that sort of area. But you know, some people can get. It was the top 2, like first and second place runners, were in a race the other day, where they both finished at like 114 or something like that. I
think Count got a 114 and V got like a low 115. I think 15. I can't remember, but it was
stupidly tight.
It was insane. And V was like really upset with himself too, and I'm like, dude, it's why you got a 115 in a race?
I think the record in race is like still 114. It's just
that's nuts, honestly.
Yeah, and I don't know if we fully mentioned or went over collapse other than the RNG rocks, but yeah, we can do this little particular setup. So we just want to keep an eye on the shadows on the ground. So you can get a bomb here, and then what happens is that the game is trying to load you back onto the initial tower map. Because you voided out, but because you entered the loading zone for the door on the same frame, it's using the coordinates from the first map to place you while loading the second map. So then you end up spawning on the outside of the tower, which allows us to fall all the way down and just exit rather than having to go through the entire tower collapse sequence. Because the tower collapse sequence can be really difficult because there's another set of Starface that can ruin everyone's day.
Yep.
Smoochies!
Oh, you got the double smooch. Nice. Smooch.
So it's a little meme in the OT community. It doesn't really save that much time. It's probably like 2 frames or something like that.
Yeah,
but
2 frames.
If you line up on a specific part of that that jail bar, Zelda will just go and Link will just sort of look face to face, and so it looks like she's giving him a little mwah. But she pushes you into the loading zone of the next cutscene, and that just saves like the half a second you need to, rather than pushing the joystick and letting Link walk into it. So it's just a little micro time save.
The 2 frames, and both Tripp and I got what's called the double kiss, where she smooches us twice. Smoochies. It's. I like it. It's a fun little meme to do. But for some reason, people always look down on runners when they set up the kiss. I'm like, why? It saves 2 frames.
It's more embarrassing when you try and set up the kiss and then fail it.
In more ways than one. Keck W.
Because then everyone Keck W's you. Exactly. You're like, haha, smoochless. And you tried to set it up.
Yeah, exactly. And like,
some kind of noob.
And in real life as well, if you try to set up a kiss and you screw it up, your mates are gonna Keck W you.
Oh man. F in chat.
Yeah, F in chat for all the people who were denied smooches.
Okay. So normally what you're supposed to do when you enter the Ganon fight is that if you super slide into it, Link just holds his shield up. And what that does is that normally in the cutscene, as you'll see here, Ganon swings his giant swords and that knocks the Master Sword out of Link's hand. But while Link is stuck in that animation where his shield is just out, the game actually registers the sword hitting the shield, not the sword. So then you're able to keep your Master Sword through the first segment of the fight. And why that's faster is that the Master Sword is the one weapon that deals the most damage to Ganon specifically. I think it deals like 4 points of damage per hit.
Yeah, 4.
Where every other item, even if it's the Bigoron sword or anything, only does 1 point of damage. So I think he has initially 10 health to start. So any other item you have to whack him 10 times with, but if you have the Master Sword, you only have to whack him with 3 jump slashes. So my fight's going to be a bit slow because I have to sit here and shoot him with light arrows. You can use the hook shot, you can use bombs, you can use the hammer, again any other thing that deals damage. It's kind of funny in the child version of this fight. You use Deku Sticks, because Deku Sticks have the same damage value as the Master Sword. The other reason why that it does though is because it breaks when you hit one thing with it, so I guess they just didn't really think of having another damage value for the stick.
Pretty much. And as Child Link, it's like, he can just kind of, like, Tripp has to roll under Ganon because of his height, but as Child Link, you can kind of just walk under him because he's so short.
Now I picked up my Master Sword, which means we can do full jump slash damage to Big G-Man here. You can also crouch stab. It's a little bit slower, but depending on where you position and everything like that, it's just a little bit. I find it a little bit easier. But that's basically the run. We're coming up on final time here, just on final slash.
Phew, nice. Phew.
I don't need to time.
Yeah, I almost reached over for my...
Woo! I unplugged my headphones. Hang on.
All good.
And time.
Hey. GG's, man.
But yeah, it's GSR.
That was GSR, yeah. A great race category, but also one of the most volatile categories we have.
Yeah, it can go either way very fast. So, but yeah, it just goes to show how optimized this run is. But again, of how accessible it is, because even if you fail 2-3 minute tricks and you might think it's all over, you can still get there.
You can still get there, exactly. And I think both Tripp and I, we love to encourage other people to pick up this game, and this is a great category to pick up. We've got a pretty active Discord. Speedrun.com/OOT has the leaderboards, guides. Like, I think OOT is probably one of the most accessible games just because of how active the community is and how many resources we have.
Yeah, there's tons of people out there willing to help with pretty much anything that you can think of, and even with all the new stuff that not many people know about, or new stuff that's being found, like there's going to be at least 5 other people who are going to want to collab with you. So yeah, if you're interested in OOT speedrunning, definitely look up the resource, or hit us up on Discord. We'll point you in the right direction.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a super cool game to run.
And we'd love to have more Aussie runners in the mix too. Like there's me, Tripp, we got Richard, Habs, Quills, Haki, he's a new one as well.
Zenki, I think, as well.
Zenki as well, yeah.
There's only a handful of Aussies out there who OOT run, so yeah, get into it.
Get into it. Get more Aussies in the fray. It was just me for like 6 years, up until like, 3 years. I was so fucking lonely. I'm like, where is everyone? Feels bad, man. And then I met more people. I'm like, oh, Pog, we got more runners now.
Yeah, thanks to the Oz Speedrun guys for setting up everything. Thanks to PAX for hosting us for the marathon. We got, Crash Bandicoot coming up next. Another race, so stick around for that. If you guys want to see more OOT content, you can follow either MikamiHero or myself. Handles are just below us. But yeah, stick around for Crash Bandy and SM64 with Para as well.
Who's also an OOT speedrunner at one point, I should point out. I almost forgot.
I guess Liquid counts as well.
Oh yeah,
all cows. All cows run.
All cows and Hundo. Yeah, can't forget our boy Liquid as well.
But Thanks for having us, guys. Thanks for hosting.
Thank you so much, all speedruns, and hope the rest of the event goes well.
We'll kick it over to you guys.
Yeah.